Hello and greetings. And That was such a powerful roundtable and fireside chat. I kindly request you to mute your mics, my dear panelists. Kindly mute your mics to avoid the feedback. Thank you so much. And my name is Ling Gitao, Communications Director for GatherVerse, and we are at our last panel for day one, and we are going to talk about the Metaverse United, how AR and XR can deepen human connection. A lot has been said, and we want to conclude with the XR and AI side of things, and I am not alone. I have a roster of amazing panelists who are going to help us demystify this discussion. And I request you, my dear panelists, to introduce yourselves briefly, tell us who you are and why you're here. And I will start with you, Maria Villa, since you're close to me. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Actually, good evening here from Portugal. So I'm the founder and CEO of Immersive Studios. My background, I'm an electrical engineer, so I specialized in AI and also in robotics. So I think today we're going to have a lot to say about AI and XR. And yeah, I'm eager to talk to every one of you.
Wow, I also suspect we have a lot to uncover. David, over to you.
Yes, hello. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you. So briefly, I am the founder of a law firm called Gamma Law. We're based in San Francisco, office in New York, and we have a significant Japan practice as well. Our focus for 2 decades now has been the cutting edge of media technologies. And in the, let's say, first 10 years, that meant largely video games, but it certainly has evolved over the last several years, where we're working in crypto, metaverse economies, and securities compliance, as well as gambling regulatory issues that are encountered by founders and established companies that are building in-game economies, in platform economies. We work in privacy, and we provide a whole range of other services for companies that are in this space, including financings, mergers, acquisitions, and so forth.
Wow, that is very extensive. We're very happy to have you here. Kuldeep.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My name is Kuldeep Singh, and I'm emerging technology leader at ThoughtWorks, building solutions for IoT, XR, Metaverse, or blockchain kind of solutions. And I'm also an author of Exploring the Metaverse, the book. Yeah. Thank you.
Wow, we're happy to have you here. Jay, over to you.
Hi, I'm Jay Schnorr, CEO and co-founder of VedX Solutions. We bring virtual reality and other XR solutions to companies and schools for training and learning. We deliver end-to-end. That includes hardware and software, and we're partnered with some of the best software applications in the world to integrate those into kits for companies and schools, and also professional services that go with those kits to make sure it's integrated seamlessly with LMS and device management.
Wow, that's wonderful. We look forward to learning from you. Casey, nice to see you again.
Hey, nice to see you too. So I'm Casey Jensen. I'm head of client partnerships at Zebrar, which is we're a creative technology studio that does all kinds of art and tech and visual effects to craft immersive experiences for all kinds of global brands, and we're also into virtual production and all kinds of fun stuff. I've been in this game for several years now. Started out in digital about 15, maybe 20 years ago. Wow. And then got into AI and XR and machine learning, computer vision, all that. So I've been having a ball for the last few years, and excited to be here.
Wow, thank you for joining us today. So, our dear audience who are watching, kindly feel free to interact with this panel, and we're very happy to have you here. So, panelists, shall we begin? Okay. Casey, since you are the one who concluded with your experience with AI and XR, do you mind if I just throw this to you? How do AI and XR tools strengthen the way people connect?
Yeah, I think it personalizes interactions. I think that's what I'm most excited about. Is while XR makes them more immersive, AI can analyze emotions in real time. Tailoring those experiences, while XR breaks these geographical barriers, making people feel more present in real life conversations. Now they can get deeper, more intuitive with the ways connect. And I think the personalization of it is really key when it comes to these things working together.
Yeah, definitely. And when we talk about personalization, I see you, Kodib, I have seen your book, and you've talked a lot about XR and how it brings that immersive experience to the audience. I want you to maybe chime in on this. How do you think AI and XR can strengthen people, how people connect?
Yeah, so especially around Metaverse, which is a combination of various technologies, including XR, AI, and stuff. I treat two key parts in specifically human connection. One is identity, like how do we define identity and how we do visualize that identity. So Metaverse and this XR is bringing the visualization, and AI is bringing all these behavior on that identity. So now generative identity is the thing happening, uh, and other part of it is communication between those identities. So earlier we had lot of barriers, be it the barrier of physical presence, be it the barrier of language, a time zone, culture. Now with XR, AI, all these things are reducing. The barrier is reducing now. So it's a metaverse is bringing a global language. It's like a global communication language for the world or for the human to connect more. So that's how I feel the identity is redefining and the communication ways are redefining.
Yeah, so I just want to follow up on that. You mentioned it, revolutionizing how people are connecting, and it brings me just to the whole essence of the metaverse. Just because you mentioned it, why are we so far? Why are we so far with the metaverse? Are we still yet there, or are we waiting for AI to come to its full actualizations to bring identity into the digital world? Where are we so far? If you don't mind.
Yeah, so it is like metaverse is not a new term. It is from last 30 year. People are trying to get into it's a different level. But how I treat metaverse is a stage of internet, which where actually we will stop making the difference between real and virtual. And to reach that stage of internet, it will take time. So it will take time for different people to reach at different levels. Some people might assume that okay, being on LinkedIn or a metaverse or a Facebook is a immersion. I treat a virtual friends as a real friend. I treat their comments and everything. That could also be a metaverse stage of metaverse for some, and for some it may not be. So it is a very subjective thing for individual people, and we might already be in certain stage in metaverse, or we still need to reach that. They're still far ahead when we really stop making that difference, that it's a real or virtual. And
Yeah.
now we are trying to build that thing, like bringing the right to know the reality. Whatever is presented to me, whether it's real or fake, still we are discussing those things. But the
Yeah.
time will come when we will really don't need to make that difference. Just like we are talking now, whether I am talking or Avatar is talking, or it may make same thing in eventually.
Wow, that is very, very powerful. I just love the way you mentioned there's layers to this, and everyone has their own stage and they're defining it. Which brings me to you, Maria. What challenges do you think are arising when integrating advanced technology with human experience? And Jay, you can also chime in on this with your experience. Maria.
Thank you, Lynn, for to allow me to speak now, because I was going to actually make a joke about the metaverse. I think we're so far away because we didn't even agree on what the metaverse is. So I think it's a bit difficult to enter the metaverse when we're not on the same page. Most of us, I would say, we think, so my perspective on the metaverse, and also as an engineer, it's all this unified experience of what the metaverse can be. And actually going back to your first question, and Casey put it really, really well about the immersion of XR and also about the personalization of AI. So we have all these areas in our lives where XR can bring immersion, and then you have AI that can bring personalization. We, for example, at Immersive, we work with brand activation, and we see it a lot with brands. The way they connect with the audience is spectacular, because they can get the feeling in real time, and they can really measure the engagement, and they can perceive how their audience is really getting to know their brand. So I think it's a bit different from just consuming passively an ad, and also being a part of the experience of living a brand. So the metaverse can also bring that into play. It can be very useful for brands, for companies. So in my perspective, it's this unified experience. So I think we're just not quite there, because we're on one part, we didn't quite agree on what the metaverse is. And then I think in terms of technology, we're not sure what the tech needs to be so we can have this unified experience. But when it comes in talking about the challenges that you were asking here, when it comes, I think we need to make sure that we have experience that it's actually democratic, because XR in its essence, it's very democratic. Everyone, in theory, from Africa, because I was seeing here some comments saying that you were representing Africa, but Africa or other continents, people can all gather on the metaverse. If, for example, someone has a physical disability and cannot enter a store and experience a given experience that the brand wants them to experience, they can do it in the metaverse. So in theory, it's democratic, but it's still, you still need specific tools to enter the metaverse. You at least need a good internet connection, or you need a computer, or you even need a VR headset. So I think we're not quite there in terms of making this an experience that everyone as a humanity can be a part of. So I think that's a challenge that we need to surpass. Also, the privacy in Europe, we talk about a lot about that. So we have the AI Act and the GDPR. We talk about a lot of data, and people really having their data secure and private. So I think like it all comes to making experiences that can be accessible to everyone, but also that people can really like be a part of it and not being left out, but also making sure that we're all safe on this space.
Yeah, and that is very true. You just summed up like what we stand for, and our standards is the GatherVerse community, privacy, safety, wellness, community development, and accessibility. Not forgetting education. Jay, do you want to have? Do you have something to add on this before we go on to the next one?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to comment. I think, Maria, you're right that we're not at the metaverse, but we are. So we don't have an agreed space. It's sort of like when the internet came on board, and nobody really agreed what the internet was until we were able to agree what the internet was organically, and it's still growing. And I think a lot of what the metaverse has been defined as is through applications rather than an open space like the internet. And so we're seeing a lot of XR companies with their applications making it web accessible. One piece that is missing throughout it all is they all want to develop their own avatar system, and you have to change avatars per app, and there's no identity that goes throughout all of them. Now, Ready Player Me has made huge inroads to be able to API into a lot of different applications, but even then, you're a bit left out if the application doesn't. So we don't have a space that we can all go to that is web accessible. And when you say accessibility tools, I think it's important to remember the main, I'll call it mainstream, laughable, but the mainstream idea of the metaverse came about with VR headsets and the applications, and saying you're in those spaces, but you will need technology and Wi-Fi to access this borderless space. So there will be a tool that's required, but much like India skipped a lot of infrastructure phone lines and leapfrogged into cellular signals, it's the same with I think the metaverse. When we do get to that space, there will be a blending of what, like Kuldeep said, a blending of that internet and the blending of this 3D immersive space, because the benefits that come have all been stated, right? You get a more realistic interaction and engagement, and that's really what we're looking for. I can't wait till we get done with social media and being able to be a troll on social media and just drop comments without consequence, right? So in a open metaverse, you do have consequence. You have an avatar, and hopefully that avatar is tied to a blockchain identity that continues with you wherever you go, whether that's for shopping or for your own just browsing. And you never have to put another password out there or another username into an application. It's the metaverse, and what humanity has ahead of it is amazing, and I love watching it chip away that way.
Yeah, Jay, I have some very many questions to follow up on that. But before I go there, thanks for touching on the issue of interoperability, right? Whereby it's all these applications, but we don't have that flexibility to go from one place to another, because each platform requires its own rules, its own assets, and all that, and all those kinds of requirements. And this brings me to you, David. You have been in the gaming space, and I just want to rephrase these questions. How have you seen virtual spaces improve real world relationships with your experience? Kindly.
Well, I think that what we've seen over the last 10 years really is the evolution of video games from, experiences that were solitary and really directed to, let's say, a certain demographic, maybe it's teen boys or whatever, typically a fairly kind of standard type of experience, which involves blowing things up and shooting people or killing other characters by various creative ways. Often, we certainly. Over the last 10 years, I've found it really, really interesting how video games have grown so far beyond that, to the extent that now we have one of the fastest, perhaps the fastest growing genres are these sort of cooperative types of experiences, where you are forming relationships with other players and you are working with those other players to accomplish certain objectives. Or perhaps there's not a real defined kind of gameplay, channel. It's more of an open world type environment, and within that open world, you can form relationships with other players, persistent, that are persistently represented by avatars or whatever it is. We certainly, there are so many stories now of people forming relationships within these platforms, and it's almost not even really accurate to call them games anymore, because that does kind of limit what it is that so many of these platforms have become. There are stories of people meeting, forming relationships that carry over to other platforms, that carry over to social media, perhaps even to real life. Of course, there's stories of people meeting within these experiences and getting married. So I think that's just really, really exciting. And I do think, although there's the mainstream press really has kind of written off the metaverse, it's almost become kind of a joke, I would say, in many people's eyes who are not so kind of knowledgeable about what's been happening. I think that the development of video games into broader experiences that appeal to a broader range of people, and offer, what I would consider much more meaningful and fulfilling types of experiences, is really a good omen, let's say, for ultimate development of the metaverse. And
Yeah.
perhaps it's going to go by a different name or whatever, but I do believe that video games are taking us step by step to the metaverse.
Wow, that's very intensive and great expressions there. And I also want to engage with our audience. What do you still think about the metaverse? Do you have something to say about what we were talking about? Is the metaverse there? Are we heading there? Is the future of video games better? And you mentioned something very critical, whereby video games are now becoming collaborative spaces, where video players are now becoming like friends or like enemies who are in a very competitive space to accomplish a certain task, not only just to compete for the sake of competing, but doing something that is really meaningful. And I love that trajectory. I'm not a gamer that much, but I believe gaming has changed a lot of people's lives. Casey, I want to come to you. How can emerging platforms create more meaningful interaction?
We go. Yeah. I think I think the future is in adaptive experiences. So, and when I say that, I mean, so imagine an AI-driven virtual space that reacts to your mood or adjusts the scenery around you, the avatars, the conversation topics. Creating a real engaging environment for connection for that person. And it sort of goes back to personalization again. But I think meaningful interactions come from technology that really understands and adapts to human needs. And I think AI is getting us there where we can start doing that. It's not so cold. It's not so, just for certain types of people, that this can open the door to really embracing a lot of people. One thing that was mentioned in the last one about sort of the examples, I think, one thing I've seen that I've enjoyed the most is just driving a wider worldview for myself. I mean, I think, being able to be somewhere watching a basketball game in Horizon Worlds or something, and being able to be standing next to somebody that's, from Denmark or Russia or wherever it might be. And so, it's so cool to be able to open that world. And I think, right now during this time, we need to have a better worldview, and we have to be able to connect with people. And I think these type of things with the emerging platforms is going to help us to do that even more. So that's what I'm really interested in.
Yeah, that's very powerful. When you just say meaningful interactions are built by trust, and when these platforms just prioritize the human aspect and what this humanity or their audience wants, and if they establish that and the aspect of trust, I believe we will create more meaningful interactions in these emerging platforms. And maybe Kuldeep, can you add something to that? What do you think about or the whole interactions thing?
Yeah. So I feel metaverse or XR, the important piece is it is all about changing the belief. We need to really believe what is presented to us as a real thing. Then only we will start interacting or start having expectation with those entities. With AI, what we are getting is we are getting the artificial sense of the world, be it human in front of us or be it the real world in front of us. We have number of now AI is bringing all the detection, depth sensing, or whatever object detection, and even behavior detection and more. And how we can generate using these technologies the more meaningful interaction is benchmarking the interaction itself. For example, we might have multiple interaction with the gestures and hand and other wristband or n number of thing, audio, video, and stuff. But are they really helpful? or not, that will, until we really start measuring them, having tools and techniques to measure them. For example, whether the interaction is bringing cognitive load to our brain. So no matter how creative the interaction we have designed, we will still not achieve the effectiveness of that if there is a cognitive load on our brain to decide what to do. It should come so naturally that if there is a rubber ball in front of me, I would probably want to touch and press it. So it's a natural interaction.
Mm.
uh, Rather than having some tools to press something and then I'm and having haptics is not having haptics is a problem. And now the smart gloves, etc., it's still bulky, but eventually there are some smart gadgets which are coming, which can give us the electric sense on our fingers, etc. Maybe those could be really making them real interactions.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think still a long way to go, but there are so many things to be done in this area to make it.
Yes, that was very heavy to unpack, and I love the aspect of measuring the interactions, measuring each interaction. Where is the impact? Where should we improve? That is very, very powerful. That's just so much to unpack. And I want to drop this to you, Maria. What steps can be taken to protect privacy in immersive environments? And anyone can chime in if you have something very important to say about this, Maria.
Well, yeah. So once again, let me just add something to what Kuldeep was saying, because I found it so. I think it's so interesting for us to be here, actually discussing what the future that is so near is going to be. Because just a few years ago, when the social media started, and when all these digital platforms started, it was amazing, right? Because we had out of pure magic, the internet connection allow us to see each other. So just being here with all of you, it was pure magic at a time. And now as going to and as really seeing the evolution of these digital platforms, it means that we're not just going to see each other, but as Kuldeep was saying, we're going to believe that we're in the presence of each other, because the barriers are going to be taken off by the realness, by the complexity of the avatars, by the complexity of the spaces. So I think we're in a very, very interesting moment now of society to discuss this. And of course, that with all these new interactions, there are a lot of dangers out there, because we need to control not only what's happening in real life, but also what's happening in these virtual environments. And I think we're going to evolve into a point that, well, this is just my personal opinion, so you can you can have an opinion against it. But I think we're going to evolve to a state that all of us, we're going to have almost this dual identity. So the person that we're in our day-to-day lives, and then the person that we're that we really feel that we want to be on the metaverse. And that can come with good things, but with bad things. So for example, if you feel that you cannot express yourself in real life, maybe you're going to have some types of behaviors that you wouldn't be confident to have it in real life, and you're going to have it in these virtual spaces. So in terms of privacy, we're not just talking about data. We're talking about privacy of children, young people, and also everyone that is going to be part of the metaverse. So if today in 2025 we're discussing the appropriate age for a young person to be part of a social media channel, maybe we should start discussing, okay, what type of platforms are you going to allow also young people to be part of? Of course, we all know Roblox, and we know VRChat and other platforms, but when the main adoption will come, and it's coming at the moment, what type of actions are we going to adopt? So I think that's also food for thought. But at the end, okay, privacy, it all comes to data. So having the possibility to really opt out and know that your data is safe, and if you don't want to be part of that platform, you can remove it. I think that's also something to really think about when you think of the development of these spaces.
Yeah, that's very powerful, Maria. And thanks for bringing that out. It's high time we even start having those conversations right now. I recap some months ago, we had a summit called Safety Summit. And these are the things we were talking about. And the questions were, who owns our data in the metaverse? Who will own them? And who has control over them? So thank you for highlighting that. Jay, I saw you agreeing to that. Do you want to chime in on this topic as well? You're muted. Kindly unmute.
Sorry, in terms of the data control, again, I think coming back to, well, a few points on those topics. The data control is a matter of how do we have that protected avatar? Like I was saying, if we all had a blockchain identity and that becomes, but there is an appropriate age of, it's like when you get a passport. Like when do you get a passport? You're as young as, a baby, and every 2 years it has to be updated. I think with a blockchain identity out there in the metaverse, that could really contain what data is being released. There is no more signing in, etc. In terms of protection and a space like Roblox, for instance, I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I think I get most of my learning from just watching them interact and work with their friends. And it's amazing, as you were saying, Maria, one of the bad sides is maybe if you're good in the metaverse, but you feel uncomfortable in live positions. We've run a couple of pilots that allow people to interact more because they're able to practice with avatars first. It's sort of a soft landing for instance, languages. All of us have a problem speaking a new language to somebody because we're watching all of their facial expressions. But if we can practice in a virtual reality avatar environment, we do get better at it in real life. And there's a lot of really cool platforms out there for that. So that was my other comment there.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that and the experience with your wonderful kids. David, I want to bring this to you. How do you approach concerns about accessibility and usability?
Well, so this is an area in US law that is quite underdeveloped. We do encounter from time to time concerns from clients about what sort of accessibility tools they need to build into their games or platforms or whatever. And at this point in the United States anyway, it's quite limited in terms of the requirements for disabled individuals. So perhaps that will expand. One would hope it would, as more and more people spend more and more time online, and particularly as I expect will happen, and I think the other panelists here believe that as well, as people will, experience more and more of their life interacting with people, with experiences in that they wouldn't otherwise be able to encounter in the real world. So, I would just say as a legal a legal matter, this is not something that in the U.S. is really very significant and doesn't affect that many games. Having said that, or that many experiences in general online. But having said that, we certainly are seeing more companies sort of I would say voluntarily putting these tools in place. I noticed, for example, that the PDF software is often notifying me, here's steps you can take to make the document more accessible. And I think the same is true in the Microsoft Office. So perhaps that's something that will be developed either voluntarily and or through legal requirements.
Wow, that is very, very interesting. And it's not only in the US alone, I think it's most parts of the world. We're still having that legal side being underdeveloped. I still feel like they have a huge part, or they have to catch up with the innovation. There's still a huge gap. And Casey, do you want to add something to that, or can I just pass it to this next question?
I mean, sure. I think everything should be designed with inclusivity in mind from day one. But let's be honest, it hasn't been, right. But I think one area that we've made a lot of progress, and part of that's been technology, is low bandwidth XR type solutions. So web-based solutions and things of that nature. And being able to make it available across different types of platforms and devices, and you don't have to have the latest laptop or latest phone. I think that's been an important direction for a lot of these. That's helped a lot. But I think there's still a long way to go. And I think Microsoft has these adaptive controllers that enable people with physical disabilities to navigate better through virtual space. So there's companies that are doing it, but I think we still have a way to go. And also with the elderly, I would say, I think a lot of these tools can be a game changer for elderly people and that are home alone or need this access to the outside world, but they don't make it very easy for them to be able to learn and understand and utilize some of these tools, which I think is an area that could be great.
Yeah, it's a great scenario, and it leads me to a follow-up that even ties to this question of what role does collaboration between creators and users play in redefining or refining experiences. Casey, you mentioned a very good example of elderly people. There's an example of people who are in the most marginalized areas. There are people who are where I come from, we call them people with special abilities, but these are people with disabilities. So how do creators and these people come together and collaborate to redefine experiences in the virtual world? And anyone can also chime in on that. But Casey, I want to hear your opinion on that.
Yeah, well, I think we figured out that collaboration is essential. I think, brands sort of push back. They're sort of worried about some of that for a while, but I think now they all know that, we're in a creator world now, and it's a creator economy, and collaboration. You've got to be able to collaborate, with the people that are creating and the users, and have them talk to each other to be able to get this real world feedback. And then things like AI can sort of iterate that experiences into real time based on that behavior. So I think the future of these technologies are based on that constant feedback loop and that data, and to be able to constantly improve things and make things better. And I think with that collaboration, we have to open that collaboration up to people with disabilities, to the elderly, to all these other people that, so they can be a part of the solutions and a part of the feedback. I think, we can't just block them out from the feedback and not do it if we want to really do this right. So, but I think collaboration is, it's an essential piece to all this.
Yes.
If I can add something to that, I think Casey mentioned, and it's really interesting because I think for designers in the, if we talk about designing the spaces and the experiences, is really keeping in mind the inclusivity since day one, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, and really understanding why you're developing the experience and why you're developing this solution. Because more and more, like people are part of these digital platforms, and we don't want to be canceled. No, I'm kidding. But of course, like everyone has an opinion, and we really want to make something that is suitable for the end user. And I think these interactions, they really need to mean something. These solutions need to mean something. And the only way that you really make sure that you're developing a solution that makes sense is putting yourself in the other person's shoes if you're not feeling the problem. But for example, for the example that Casey mentioned, I remember last year I was part of a panel of a consortium of a European project, and they were developing a solution for elder people, and it was basically VR for rehabilitation. But they actually use it a lot, and we were talking about like people in their 80s and even 90s. So you can have solutions with VR and other immersive technologies that are adapted to people from all ages. So you just need to make sure that the solution makes sense for that targets.
Yeah, it's very, very important. I think that hits on the point of empathy, putting your shoes on other people's shoes, especially your users, especially the people you're building for. And I also want to bring in the aspect of having a diverse team of people who are also part of the people you're making for, right? You can't just create things in a monoculture kind of environment. It's good to have a diverse team of people who you can collaborate on that. And this brings this to you, David. How do you see virtual interaction evolving in the coming years? You have seen the gaming industry from where it was to where it is right now, and with that experience, give us your view on how you see virtual interaction changing over the years.
Well, I think the opportunities are so amazing, and going back to something that was said earlier, with the integration of AI into virtual types of experiences. I mean, the idea that you could have a conversation with someone in China, let's say, without being able to speak Chinese, or other, let's say, far-flung parts of the world, and being able to perhaps even develop meaningful ongoing relationships with individuals from entirely different cultures, different languages. That language barrier with AI tools, it seems, is in not very much time is almost going to become just a minor kind of impediment, a minor inconvenience. I think that's quite amazing and extraordinary. And we've already seen this to some extent, I think, recently. And I'm trying to recall exactly the circumstance, but it was the new, it was the Chinese social media platform that many people were kind of migrating to when it appeared that TikTok might be banned in the US. And interesting, things that you would read on in social media about all these relationships that we're developing. And that was without the use of AI translation tools. And just that experience, I think, was quite eye-opening for many Americans, certainly. So I think that the language barrier, basically going away is going to be quite significant in terms of, expanding virtual interactions. And, I think that hopefully, we haven't unfortunately seen this much so far, but hopefully there's going to be some real virtual world experiences that cross national boundaries and that really attract a lot of interest from people in different parts of the world, and the opportunities that could arise for interactions and for cooperative engagement. And hopefully this sort of connections, and this has of course always been the promise of the internet, that human connections and the opportunity for those human connections to kind of transcend this old paradigm that we have of national kind of competitions and hostilities. I really do believe that if people are able to interact directly and develop an understanding, and as you said, Lynn, empathy, of course, a big part of that equation, I really do believe that has an extraordinary potential to change the world as we know it.
Yeah, that is very, very profound. And I just want to maybe close things off with these very important questions, because there's so many startups here, the organizations that are watching, and the founders who are watching, and the aspiring founders who are watching too. And they would like to know, how can organization incorporate these technologies into their daily work? And I just want to, anyone who wants to chime in on that can bring their thoughts forward. Kuldeep, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, so definitely one of the thing which we are doing at our organization is creating awareness around the technology. It is still far from, because people understand the way they want to understand, because this is how industry is telling the world. Though there are different definitions of these technology, no matter how AI or XR or IoT and blockchain, people explain it the way they want to. So we want to have good awareness about it, creating the platform so that people can use this more and more. And the future is not about just one organizations or individuals. It is a collaborative effort from government, from academia, from the industry and businesses to come together and build something which can take more responsible future. So that's where I think the future is, and especially for or a guideline for the startups or the newcomers who want to bring the XR. It's not about a technology which we can force fit to just any use case.